All right, so I'm gonna make a video for you guys about timed eating. I don't know if you've heard of that before. I'm hoping you haven't, because I just made it up a little while ago. Timed eating is what I do, and is what I recommend to a lot of my clients to do that are busy, just really don't have time, or don't have ambition, don't care to, or think the other things they've heard of, like cyclical ketogenic diet, is way too complicated, or fasting, all that. Just don't want to do it. Sounds restrictive, doesn't sound fun. Timed eating doesn't sound so bad, right? So, and it's really not. Keep in mind, this is not the perfect, ideal, best case scenario diet. It's not going to get you down to 3% body fat. It's not going to cure you of all ailments and diseases. But what it is going to do is it's going to give you a foundation that you can always fall back on. And you can do this every day, day in and day out, very easily, without a lot of complication. So it's really not that bad. And what you'll find is this is probably going to actually save you some money, because you're going to stop eating so much junk food, because you're not going to want it. Not because you're restricting yourself, you're just not going to desire it anymore. Also, you're not going to eat as much, and it's going to free up some time. So for like me personally, I work 5-6 days a week out of my vehicle. Typically I used to go and stop somewhere to get something to eat because I forgot to pack something, or for whatever reason, or didn't feel like it. So there's a realistically probably an hour out of my time, out of my day, and then $20 for lunch nowadays. Well, that's out the window. You'll stop worrying about that. So timed eating. So basically, everything I do, I focus on what's the top 20% of things that are actually getting 80% of the results, right? Most people focus on the 80% of the things they need to do, and they get overwhelmed and they stop doing it altogether. So you focus on the top 20 things that are getting you the results. So what's the 20% with controlling your eating habits so that you can be at a healthy weight and at a healthy body composition, right? It's not so much the weight as, what's that weight made of. So what you're eating, the quality of food, and when you're eating it, okay? I'm not going to go into great detail of what and why certain things work. This is just to give you an idea of what I do, and this is basically, you can think of this as my worst case scenario of what I do when I'm really busy with work. And then there's all that other complicated stuff you can always delve into when you got more time or energy, okay? So I start my day off, and this would be on a general, work day. I'm gonna get up. I usually like to start my day off with some black coffee. That's how I start my day. Or better than that would be to just start your day off with water. The reason for that is because you haven't eaten all night, so you're technically fasting, even though you don't even realize it maybe. You've been fasting since the last time you ate. So a good way to cheat and to fast every day is to just fast while you're sleeping. So when you wake up, the longer you can put off eating, the longer you can continue on that fast. Now you can go ahead and Google or look up all the benefits of fasting. So we're not going to get into it in this video. And yes, I'm telling you to delay breakfast. You don't have to have breakfast. It is not the most important meal of the day. I believe the Kellogg company is the one that came up with that slogan to sell more breakfast foods. So it brings up another good point. I'm not a doctor. Do what your doctor says. And if you don't like what your doctor says, go find another one until you like what they say. I'm going to tell you a lot of stuff contrary to common beliefs nowadays. So keep that in mind. So delay eating as long as you can so you can continue on that fast. That's why it's called breakfast. Break fast. The first thing I consume that actually has any calories in it during the day is a Bulletproof coffee or a keto coffee. I specifically have a Bulletproof coffee. So I have Bulletproof coffee beans, the brand from Dave Asprey. collagen, the inner fuel, MCT oil, and butter. Very important that it's unsalted butter. You don't want to put salted butter in your coffee. It's nasty. And you have to blend it or it's nasty. Once you blend it, everyone I've ever told this to that's never heard of it before says it's the most nasty, disgusting thing they've ever heard of. But if I can get them to taste it, or I just say, here, try this. It's not, you'll like it. Everyone always likes it, but it's the idea of it that sounds gross. But honestly, butter is just agitated cream that's had the proteins and more sugars removed, I believe. So it's just a heavy cream you're putting in your coffee, and you blend that up. So you don't have to put the collagen in. I want to get collagen in my system every day because we really need it, and we don't get a lot of it in our diets. So, but that's breaking my fast right there with that collagen in there. The inner fuel is a prebiotic or a probiotic from Bulletproof, which is good for your gut health. And then the MCT oil is just a good clean fats, and that's what the butter is too. So if you really want to kind of cheat and keep your fast going, trick your body into it's still staying in that fasting mode a little bit, just put the MCT oil and the butter in your coffee, blend that up, drink that. That's going to give you calories. It's going to give you, you're going to feel satiated because the fats in your system, once you can digest them, is what your body's going to burn, right? So you're getting twofold with this. You're getting some sustenance into your system, and also you're teaching your body that the fuel that it needs to go to first thing is fats. So eventually what happens is every time you don't eat and you need some energy, your body turns to fats, which you happen to be really good at storing and carrying, instead of turning to sugars, which you're really bad at storing and carrying, and you always have to get more and you have to go eat those. You don't need to, if you're using fat as fuel, you always have a supply on you, okay? So when you first start off in this, I recommend just a drop of MCT oil because it literally, more than a half a teaspoon when you're not used to it, it'll go right through you and you will have disaster pants immediately. And you don't want that, it's really inconvenient. So you got to get used to digesting it again because your body's not used to digesting fats like it should be. Once you're used to it, then you'll start using it as fuel, and you won't get any gastrointestinal distress or anything. You're teaching your body to use body fat for fuel. You're giving it some fuel and you're giving it some nutrients to get going, and you're putting off eating proteins or carbohydrates unless you're already putting the collagen in there, which is protein. So this is where I get into, this is timed eating, because if you can stick to fats early in the day, that's going to have some really good benefits and kind of continue on your body thinking it's fasting and carrying on with that mode of repairs and doing things, even though you're actually taking in some calories and some sustenance. Depending on the weather and my activity for the day. So if it's really cold, I'll get hungry faster because I'm burning calories to stay warm. Or if I'm working really hard, I'm going to get hungry faster. And I don't force myself to do one way or the other. So if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. I'm not going to put it off, and I'm not going to count calories. You'll never, I hate saying never, but I cannot remember the last time I made anyone count calories, literally in the last 10, 15 years, because it's on that 20/80, it's not in the 20% of things that gets you results. It's way over the other end of the spectrum. When you've covered all your other bases, you might as well count calories and see what you're doing. But it really is, doesn't give you the information that people think it does. So typically that coffee will get me through until 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I've been up since 5:36. And I had my black coffee, and then about 6 or 7, or sometimes I'll fill my thermos with the Bulletproof, the keto coffee, and I'll put off drinking that until 10 or 11. Then I'll have that, and then sometime between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, I'm still working. I'll have a Greek yogurt, plain, doesn't have anything added into it. I just buy the plain Greek yogurt, and then I control what goes in. So if I want a little bit of sweetness, I can use something like monk fruit or stevia. So it's not actually sugar, and it's not gonna hit my blood sugar and spike my blood sugar up. If you use stevia or monk fruit or anything out there nowadays, check your ingredients and make sure they're not adding other things in. I literally looked at a box of stevia the other day. It said stevia right on the front. Turned it over. It had ingredients on it. The very first ingredient was dextrose, which is sugar. So they had branded that name stevia, and then it was sugar. I put in there blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. Those are very low on the index of hitting your blood sugar. Almonds, macadamia nuts, cashews, and put that in a little container. It's really easy to prep that in the morning, even if you're running late, and take that with you. And that'll be my afternoon meal if I need one. In the summertime when it's really hot, sometimes I don't want to eat at all, and I don't make myself eat. So I don't make myself not eat, I don't make myself eat, okay? In the evening when I'm all done, preferably before 6 o'clock, but to be honest, sometimes it could be 9 o'clock at night, I'll have my one big meal, and I will consume all the calories that you normally do throughout the day. I consume all at once. And I try to make sure all my sources of food are good, clean, not necessarily organic, because that can be a gimmick where you're just paying for a label and they just paid to get a tag. But I check my sources. I try to buy from as local as I can. I try to make sure it's as natural as can be. And then you do your research. So high fructose corn syrup can be considered a natural product, but it really jacks you up and is really bad for you. So just because something says all natural, a good instance of that is honey can be 49% high fructose corn syrup and still be labeled as all natural. So when you buy your honey, that's one specifically where you want local, unpasteurized, raw, all of that. So basically every time we find a term that we know, okay, this means something healthy and this is what we start buying, the companies start figuring out how to get their stuff labeled like that, so we'll buy it. So even on products that you know and you trust, keep going back and checking the labels every few months or however often to make sure they're not sneaking stuff in on there. So basically that's my timed eating. Any carbs that I'm going to have, sometimes I might go all day and not have carbs, and I'm used to that now. Sometimes I go for periods, especially in the winter, where I'm going to have carbs every day. But I have my carbs as late into the day as I can, but not too late into the evening. So that dinner time window is where I try to have them, and I haven't had any all day. So real early in the day when you have carbohydrates, they hit your body in a lot different way than if you have them in the afternoon or evening, early evening, and then they affect you differently again if you have them in the late evening. So we're not going to villainize carbohydrates or fats or proteins or any of that like a lot of these diets do, but controlling when and how we eat them. And think of this too, if you go back just a few hundred years, or even go back 100 years to our great-great-grandparents, when they didn't have refrigeration, do you think they were eating 3 square meals a day? And each meal was different, and each meal was this and that, and then leftovers and all that. They didn't have that. They know when they look through just history of just a few hundred years ago, most people ate one big meal a day, and it varied throughout the day of what time of day that big meal was. And then the rest of the day, they might just pick and piecemeal what was left over from that big meal, and that was it. And they got most of the calories in one big meal. And we can still look at indigenous tribes and places around the world now that still kind of live like that, and they still do that to the extent that sometimes their protein intake is all limited to once a week or whenever they find it, but it's not on an everyday basis. And the body is phenomenal at storing things, which is why we're always obsessing about losing weight, because we're really good at storing it, and it's hard to get our bodies to let go of it. So I'm very moderate on my protein. It's not real high. It's less on a typical basis of a day. It's less than 1 gram per lean pound of body weight for me, because I'm not bodybuilding. I'm not trying to build mass. I'm trying to keep my inflammation low. And really, when you're not forcing your body to process protein, it only likes to process about 24 grams of protein a day for an average man. So I try to keep most of my fat, most of my calories, most of my consumption is going to be really clean, healthy fats, a little bit of protein, and then usually some carbs at night. And that's how I try to time it. So to sum everything up, if you try to extend your fast, that is going to give you a huge bang for your buck with a little bit of effort. When you want to break your fast, break it first with fats. That's going to teach your body to turn to fats for fuel. It's going to reteach you. That's what you used to do as a baby, so you're reteaching it to do that again. Then try to have 1 or 2 meals a day. For me, I like to do a snack, which is like the yogurt, and 1 big meal. And they may flip-flop. Sometimes my big meal is early in the day, and then my snack is in the evening, and vice versa. It just depends on schedule. Don't restrict yourself. If you feel hungry, eat. Just make sure it's good quality food that is dense in nutrients. Not light and fluffy, like popcorn is horrible for you. Cheese is actually pretty good if it's good quality cheese. And don't force yourself to eat because you think you should, because it's breakfast time or lunchtime or dinner time. Don't force yourself to eat. Don't force yourself to not eat. And then check the quality of your sources of your foods. That is going to make a huge, huge difference, just changing that. So what I'll probably do is give a succinct rundown either in the notes or do it on the screen and give you the breakdown of those few pointers and go from there with it.